So thank you for joining our final webinar for National Arts Month celebration of Erehwon Center for the Arts. And today we're having a visual arts webinar to be facilitated by Teacher Dindi. So Teacher Dindi is a dependable educator with a collective experience of 2 decades of teaching art to children from preschool to high school level. And she has expertise in teaching arts appreciation and visual communication, and is experienced in preschool education, graphic design, and marketing. She is a dynamic team player, having managed several partnerships with educational institutions and family oriented organizations. She has also participated and spearheaded a handful of fund drives and social enterprises giving access to art materials and free art workshops for indigent students, out of school youth, and urban poor communities, all for the purpose of advancing creative development and accessible arts education for everyone. So, without further ado, let's have Teacher Dindi for this webinar.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me in this webinar on the basics of visual arts. Okay. First of all, thank you to everyone also for spearheading this event. I'm always it's also one of my what you call this personal mission to be sharing about visual arts and its importance. So that's why my main topic for now is what is visual arts and why should we care? Okay. Um, I I chose this title because I wanted people to realize that visual arts is not just about decor or not just for aesthetics. Okay. So may I share screen for now? There. All right. Wait Ikot natin. Just a minute. Here you go. Can everybody see my screen?
Okay po.
Wait lang, nawala.
Wala.
There you go. Okay. All right. So what is visual arts and why should we care? Now, to begin, I want us to look at this image. No? It's a very simple, very preschool-like na activity. No? It's just a picture word match. Now, I want everybody to think of a word that best describes uh, each of the images. No, for 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 10 of these images. You can write it down, you can just memorize it. But one word that comes into mind, yung unang naiisip ninyo pag nakita niyo yung image na yan. So I'll give you mga 30 seconds. Okay. So one word per picture, and I want you to put that in your mind first or just jot it down, and then we'll get back to it later at the end of the webinar. All right? So let us begin. What is visual arts and why should we care? Okay. Um, First, I want us to, this is the things that I will be sharing to you about our webinar. What is visual arts? I'll be talking about a brief history and the different elements and principles of design. And then afterwards, we learn about the importance of the creative process. What do experts say about creativity and how important it is in our society? And then an overview of the different forms of visual arts. Now, visual arts kasi is a very vast form of art, no? So, I will be tackling these common topics under it. And then lastly, why investing in the arts and creative development is very important for our future. Okay? So, let us start first with what is visual arts? Now we already know, all of us I'm sure know who Albert Einstein is. No? Albert Einstein said that imagination is actually more important than knowledge. Why do you think he would say that? Now the visual arts are an art form that creates works that are primarily visual in nature. Okay, meaning nakikita natin sa mata. So everything na nakikita natin na artwork sa mata is visual art. They include most ancient forms such as painting and drawing, and the arts that were born thanks to the development of technology, which is sculpture, printmaking, photography, and also installation art, the latter, which is a combination of multiple creative expressions. Now, though beauty is in the eye of the beholder, there are different eras in art history that have had their own principles to define beauty, from richly ornamented taste of the Baroque period to the simple, more current effects of modern and postmodernism, or the cryptic interpretational abstract art forms. But when did visual art start? Okay, there. Visual art started, well, the current usage of the term visual arts includes fine arts as well as applied or decorative na arts and crafts. But this was not always the case. Before the arts and craft movement in Britain and elsewhere at the turn of the century, 20th century, the term artists had for some centuries often been restricted to somebody who works in the fine arts lang. No? For example, painting, sculpture, or printmaking.
Teacher Dindi,
So,
excuse
then,
me.
yes.
Um, are you supposed to share your screen? Kasi we're not seeing it po.
Wala pa?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait lang. What happened?
Nawala siya kanina.
Oh, okay, okay. Thank you, Alex. Thank you. Let's try this again. There.
Ayan, okay na po.
Yan. Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
So wala pang nakakita nung nung ating previous activity?
Wala po.
Okay, sige. I'll go back to that first, no? My apologies. One more. There you go. Okay, so again, what is visual arts and why should we care? This is our first activity. Parang simple game lang to. Okay, so ulitin natin. Magre-rewind lang ako ng konti. So we have here 10 images and I want you to think of or jot down a word that you associate to each of the images. Okay, so since ulit tayo, sige mga 20 seconds. Okay. Okay. Sige, sana nakapagsulat kayo. Very easy lang naman yan. Okay? Let's move on to, okay, quick review lang ulit. These are my topics that I'd like to share with you. What is visual arts? The importance of the creative process, overview of the different forms of art, and why investing in the arts and creative development is important for our future. All right. Okay, so let's start again with what is visual arts? Yan. So I'm starting with the famous quote of Albert Einstein that imagination is more important than knowledge. Okay. So I've shared already the meaning of visual arts, that it's any art forms that creates that artworks that are created primarily for visual, that are visual in nature, no? And it can be as ornamental as the artworks during the Baroque period, or as simple or modern during the modern and postmodernism, and sometimes also cryptic like abstract art forms. But I've shared already na previously lang na when did visual art start? Okay, so sinasabi nga dun sa mga researches is before kasi pag visual arts or artist ka, people would only think that you're a painter or a sculptor or a printmaker. Okay? Other than that, other forms of artworks are deemed as mere manual labor. No? But during the turn of the century, during the 20th century, there was an arts and craft movement in Britain, and the term artist had for some centuries of been restricted, which was restricted just for the fine arts, was applied to not non-decorative arts as well. So crafts, applied visual arts, and graphic design media. The distinction was emphasized by artists of the arts and craft movement who valued vernacular art forms as much as the high forms. So why is this important to point out? Maybe it's important to remember then that during in the Western art as well as the East Asian art, painting has been always a high form of art. People put it in the highest degree because they think that it's the most educated, imaginative artists do it. But even now, paintings and sculptures are some of the most expensive art forms that people exchange or are included in the trade and industry, no? And during in the Chinese paintings, the most highly valued styles were those of scholar paintings, well, at least in theory, practiced by uh, gentlemen amateurs. Okay, so these days, visual art pertains to all art forms that our eyes can absorb, and these are the arts that meet the eye and evoke an emotion through an expression of skill and imagination. But when do we have any if some of you might ask, when did it start? Do we have any recorded instance that indicates when the visual art started? Well, we can probably go back to during the Paleolithic, no, which includes figurative art that people unearthed in the caves 40,000 to 35,000 years ago. There were hand stencils, simple geometric shapes, or even mga um, images of livestock of the people before. So Paleolithic cave representations of animals that were found in France and in Spain, in Europe, and Maros, Sulawesi in Asia, and also in Australia. And then moving forward, we can attribute the ancient Egyptian drawings on papyrus, often depicting people, and they were also used as models for painting and sculpture. So we can also attribute that to the developing history of visual arts until the Greek period, where they would draw on the ancient Greeks would draw on they would draw geometric figures, and then later human forms in black figure pottery during the 17th century BC. And then with paper on in Europe, by the 15th century, drawing was heavily adopted by masters such as Sandro Botticelli, Raphael, Michelangelo, and Leonardo da Vinci, who sometimes treated drawings as an art on its own rather than just a preparatory stage of painting or sculpture. Okay, so that's our brief history of visual arts, and also um, who is an artist. All right. Okay, let's move forward to what makes an artwork visual arts. Okay, visual arts usually encompasses these basic elements of art. Okay, either also the basic principles of design. So I have here in front in the screen the basic elements of art and our principles of design. Now, what is the difference between these two groups? Okay, so technically they're both the building blocks of visual arts. So you don't know visual arts or you cannot dabble into visual arts not unless you are familiar with these. No? So they're used to create any visual art piece. The building blocks of visual arts are called the elements of art. Now, visual artists usually have at least one or two of these elements present in their pieces, sort of like atoms that both serve as building blocks for creating something. You know that the atomic the atoms combine and form other things. Sometimes they'll casually make a simple molecule, as just like when the hydrogen and oxygen combine together to form water. So if hydrogen and oxygen, but if they take a more aggressive career path and bring carbon along as a co-worker, together they might form something more complex like a molecule of sucrose, C12, H22, O11. No? So similar to this, artists manipulate the building blocks or the elements of art. So they mix them with the principles of design and compose a piece of artwork. Now, I'm sure most of us know this because these are one of the topics that are usually tackled in art subjects back in school, okay, or in art clubs. But not every artwork contains all of these. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 here with me, okay? The elements of art are space, yeah, the area between and around objects. Now, space kasi is medyo paiba-iba yung topics about space. Meron yung foreground and background lang. So, in our sample here, the Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci, Mona Lisa is the foreground and the background is that landscape behind it. But more than the foreground, which is the positive space, and the background, which is the negative space, we also have different levels of the space. Now, as I've mentioned, the positive space will be the foreground, and the background has two levels. There's a middle ground, which is this detail here in the middle of the painting that has a more clearer detail of the landscape, and the background, which is a bit blurred. Okay, so that is our space. Now we have also color and value. Color actually encompasses value, but sometimes people separate them. Not color technically is the light reflected of objects. It has three main characteristics, which is the hue or the name of the color, like red, blue, green, and there's the value, the lightness or darkness of a color. So when you mix black to a color, it will be dark red, dark blue. If you mix white to a color, it will be baby blue or pink. Yan, no? Now, the last characteristic of color is intensity. It's brightness or dullness. Okay? And then next with our elements of art is the texture. Okay, this is a wall tapestry by Spanish art master Juan Miro. And small trivia about this tapestry. This is found in the World Trade Center, which was burnt down during the 9/11 attack. No? So very sad na nawala siya, but it's very big. It's a very big wall tapestry. And it's a very nice example of texture. Texture is the surface quality that can be seen and felt. But sometimes texture doesn't have to be actual. There's also implied texture where the roughness or smoothness of a surface is just drawn or implied by the artist. Okay, so next with texture is line. The line is actually not a natural mark. It's not a natural element. No? A line is a mark that is made by artists. And it can be horizontal, vertical, diagonal, straight, curved, thick, or thin. Okay. And of course, next to line would be our shapes. Okay. Shapes, just like our example here, which is made by another Filipino art master, Constancio Bernardo, is a closed line. So it's a group of lines that are close together and can be described as geometric, like squares or circles, or organic, or in natural shape, like a cloud or a water puddle. Shapes are usually flat and they can express length and width. But for those with another dimension, which is form, like this one, a sculpture made by Arturo Luz, a three-dimensional forms talk about three-dimensional artworks. They express length, width, and depth. So yung mga balls, cylinders, boxes, and pyramids, those are forms. Okay, so art would be sunk without these basic elements. Sometimes they're known as moving points. So while line isn't something found in nature, it's absolutely essential as a concept to depicting objects and symbols and defining shapes. So in another example, a sculptor would by default has to have both form and space in their sculpture because these elements are three-dimensional. They can also be made to appear in two-dimensional works through the use of perspective or shading in values. So texture in another element like form or space can be real. They can be felt when your fingers run through them like an oriental rug or like a wall tapestry, or it can be implied. And of course, color is often the whole point for people who are visual learners and thinkers. Now, if some of you might be art educators or parents and are would like to address the creative development of their students or children, color is a very important element of art. Okay, now moving forward with our principles of design. Now, if we were to say chefs are presented with ingredients like the elements of art, we have to know how to cook these ingredients together. So which elements would go first, which elements are great to combine with, and what are the procedures. So these procedures and directions or steps on how to use the elements of art are called the principles of design. So if you Google these principles of design, medyo iba-iba yung mga results. So some might say na 5 lang ang principles of design. Some may have about dozen. And even articles that agree on the number don't necessarily agree on which ones should be included in that number of principles. So in reality, there are roughly a dozen basic principles of design that beginning and veteran artists alike should keep in mind. Okay, so whether you're an artist, a photographer, an interior designer, or a sculptor, it's good to know all of these principles of design. And in addition, there are also some secondary principles of design. But for this webinar, we will focus on these 10 principles, okay? So we have rhythm, emphasis, contrast, proportion, balance, scale, movement, pattern, variety, and unity. Tama ba? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Correct. Okay, so let's start first with rhythm. Okay. All right, so rhythm is a principle of design that shows repeated singular elements in order to show organized movement or pulsating energy. So it's usually similar objects like this one here in this photo. These are the same vertical lines and horizontal lines at the back. So it shows an organized movement. And then when we go to emphasis, emphasis is the practice of showing focus within an artwork. So just like here in the Girl with the Pearl Earrings by Vermeer, the focus is the girl obviously, but mostly on the face. So everything else is dark and have shadows in them, except for the face of the girl. So there's emphasis in the painting. And beside it is contrast. Contrast naman is the stark difference between the lightness and darkness. So makikita natin yan kahit sa mga screens with our mobile phones or with our TVs or computers. Meron yung mga high contrast, low contrast, no? It pertains to the amount of difference between all elements in an artwork. So in this example, photograph, the high contrast of the foreground, which is a very dark shadow, against the light background or the sunset. Okay. And then next, which is very obvious, I think this is one of my favorite principles, is the balance. Lalo na pag OC ka, favorite mo yan. So it's not always measured, but the principle shows the visual weight of different elements. So sometimes you want to make it really balanced. So when you divide the artwork in the middle, similar on left and right or top and bottom. But we call that symmetrical balance. Now, there's also asymmetrical balance, wherein each side of an artwork have different subjects, but the balance is still achieved, just like here in our sample photograph. Yeah. Next is scale. Now, this one I think is a very, what do you call this? It's a trending principle of design. I see a lot of these types of photos in Instagrams or in Facebook posts. Now, we pretend that one object is smaller than the other one. And kunwari, kinakain ng kamay, ganyan, di ba? So, that's called scale. Now, scaling is a play of size comparisons in different images of or objects present in our artwork. Okay, and then next is proportion. Now, this picture, the Vitruvian Man of Leonardo da Vinci, is a perfect example of proportion. Somewhat similar to scale, but it pertains more on the ratio of distances or sizes within the artwork. Also, another good example of proportion are caricatures. So if a caricature artist wants to focus on a particular body part, they make it bigger than the rest of the body part. Okay. And then we have movement. Okay. Movement obviously shows movement using the different elements of art in certain levels or regulated number of times to show that there's a flow within the artwork. And then also we have pattern, which is very common also, especially during Christmas with our gift wrappers. Yan. So it shows a repeated design. It doesn't have to be, a difference with rhythm is in pattern, artists usually use different elements repeatedly. But in rhythm, it's the similar element repeatedly. Okay. And then there's also unity. Now, this might be interchanged somewhat, no? Rhythm and unity. But unity kasi it also uses similar elements, but it portrays consistent visual impact on the audience. It shows similar materials all over the art piece, or similar values are used. Like for example, here in our craft sample, they're all triangles, and the triangles are all in pastel hues. No? So, yun yung kanyang similar element ng ginawa niya to create unity in the art piece. And then opposite of unity is variety. Okay? So in variety, the practice of using several different elements and different materials or opposite shades or different textures in creating interest and or contrast in an artwork. Just like this installation here. Maybe I can zoom it a little bit closer. Yeah. So there are different lines and different textures, different shades. Some are bright, some are dull, which causes more interest in the artwork. Okay. So those are our principles of design. Now, so we've already learned about the basics of visual arts, basic elements of art, its history, who is an artist, what is the definition of visual arts. Let's move forward to our next topic, which is the importance of the creative process. Okay, okay pa ba tayo, everybody? Pwede ba akong makarinig? Yes.
Oo.
Yes.
Opo, opo.
Okay naman.
Opo, okay. Thank you.
Yes po.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay. So we'll move on to the importance of the creative process. Now, this answers the question in our title, why should we care? Okay. Now, itong quote that I'd like to share with you by Pablo Picasso, learn the rules like a pro, and so you can break them like an artist. Okay, di ba? Kasi when we do art, it's a bit boring if we're always following these rules na dapat straight ang line, dapat within the paper, dapat ganito, ganyan. Dapat itong color, i-mix mo lang with this color, di ba? Parang medyo boring yon pag lahat tayo gagawin yon. But when we break the rule, it should be creative in a way. Yan, no? It should be appealing to the audience. Okay? So, creativity, dyan tayo papasok dun sa ating creativity and the importance of the creative process. Okay? So, learn the rules like a pro and break them like an artist. Okay? So, in the past, scientists thought that creativity came solely from the right hemisphere of the brain. I'm sure some of you have already heard this, na right brain siya kasi creative siya. Tapos yung magaling sa math at saka magaling sa sciences, analytics yan, so left brain siya. Pero there are recent studies that have shown that many neural networks cross each other in the brain and spark creativity and control our responses to various stimuli. So, for well-noted American psychologist John R. Hayes, creativity is defined as the potential of persons to produce creative works, whether or not they have produced any works yet. No? But for this webinar, we'll focus on the creative productivity. So, creative productivity meaning creativity expressed in the actual production of creative works. Okay? It's not with the unexpressed potential for producing such works. So second, we'll focus on giving each of you suggestions on how we can help each other or ourselves or our family, especially those who are teachers, their students or parents, their children, how to perform creative acts at their own highest level. Okay? So that is our goal by the end of this webinar. Okay. Okay, let us go to. So when we tell a joke or story, even think about the last get together we had before the quarantine, or our brains are taking input from the world around us. So accessing memories and creating new thoughts in short cognition, the constant of our experience. In recent years, scientific evidence has revealed that mental cognition results from dynamic interactions of distributed brain areas operating in what's called the large-scale neuron networks. So this means it doesn't just limit our process into one particular hemisphere, kung left lang or right lang. Palagi siyang nagko-cross or communicate together in both hemispheres. So this creativity means to, what does this mean to deep thinkers and how will it benefit us, no? Have you all heard about the International Dot Day? Okay, it was first observed by a teacher named Terry Shea. So he introduced this book, The Dot, by Peter H. Reynolds on September 15, 2009. The book revolves around the idea of allowing a girl to trust her abilities and begin a journey of self-discovery. Since then, that day in September 15 is celebrated to encourage creativity, courage, and collaboration among students, among children. And this was established under the belief that when we give children the freedom to create and express, this will ensure their proper mental growth and development. So, well, technically, we're all born natural innovators and with powerful imaginations. So, we really don't have to force ourselves to be creative. What we only need to do is to be consistently reminding our brains to exercise it. Just like our body, we need to exercise. Kailangan we also need to exercise our brains. Now, in 1968, George Land from World Business Academy, he was an author, and a speaker, consultant, and general systems scientist. Okay, he conducted in 1965 a research study to test the creativity of 1,600 children, ranging from 3 to 5 years old, who were enrolled in a Head Start program. Okay, why did he do this? Kasi he had this creativity test that was meant for adults. Pero he decided to also test it on children. Okay? This was the same creativity test he devised for NASA. So to help select innovative engineers and scientists. And the assessment worked so well that he decided to try it on children. So he retested the same children from 5 years old. 98% of them were found to be very creative. And then, when they were 10, only 30% na lang. So, bumaba. And then, they were retested at 15 years old, 12% na lang. And then, the same test to 280 adults, 2% na lang ang creative. Di ba parang, wow, imagine that. Na habang tumatanda tayo, nawawala yung ating sense of creativity. Hindi natin napapractice. in conclusion, nakakatawa yung kanyang conclusion is non-creative behavior is learned. But the creative behavior is actually natural in us. No? Kaya sinasabi nila yung maganda yung yung nakakatuwa pakinggan yung imagination ng mga bata, 'di ba? So why should we care about this best? The Adobe study, Creativity and Education, Why It Matters, surveyed about 1,000 full-time salaried workers aged 25 or older with at least 4-year college degree. Okay? Majority of the respondents, 68%, said that creativity isn't a personality trait, but it's a skill that they can learn. And 71% said creativity should be taught in a class. Okay, so NASA Langley Research Center in Hampton, USA, offers a class once a month for its employees to enhance their creativity. And another example closer to home, for example, in my case, no, I used to work in SGB and Company. It's an accounting firm, and I used to be part of the marketing and communications department. And we were in charge of manipulating graphic design materials for our colleagues and creating marketing and advertising materials for clients. But I also handled a liberal arts program. What is this liberal arts program for? It was organized by by the company for monthly creativity and arts and culture events. So we would have workshops and field trips on museums and galleries for all employees. So it ranged from food cuisine to visual arts to practicing yoga, yeah, no, and Zumba for all the employees because they believe that it boosts morale and analytical thinking for the accountants specifically and lawyers in that firm. So creativity is actually very important. And art, visual arts, is one big factor for harnessing it. Okay, everything we do is about creativity and innovation, said Steve Gates from NASA. The focus of their programs, their arts and cultures program for the employees is to find ways to transform future space missions by reducing costs, increasing efficiency. Expert says this cannot be done without creative thinking. So Steve Gaddis said that one class exercise links traditional engineering approaches to developing new technologies and asking, what if we do this instead, diba? The participants are told to come up with a dozen or more ideas in solving problems. And no matter how outlandish, said, we might have an aha moment and we might be creating innovative rocket ships or space, what do you call this? We might reach the final frontier. Parang yung mga nakikita natin sa mga science fiction, di ba? Imagine Jules Verne wrote the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And during the time when he wrote that, wala pang technology of submarines. And then afterwards, it was invented. Diba? So creative experiences provide opportunities for all of us, especially children, to express and demonstrate their knowledge in interesting and meaningful ways. So fostering our creativity builds a foundation for healthy development and love for learning. No? Okay. So moving forward to that, what are these different forms of visual arts that we can tackle to harness our creativity? Okay. Now, also for Anne pala, no, commercial, if you want a transcript of my webinar, I'd gladly give this to everyone so you can all review it again. No? These are information that I want everybody to always remember, and I'd be glad to share my transcript. No, Alex, paalala mo na lang sa akin so I can, Alex, I can share it to you. Okay? So the different forms of visual arts, and let's make this closer. Okay. So visual arts, pag sinabing visual arts, hindi lang yung painting, no? So visual arts includes a wide array of media tools and processes. The areas most people associate with visual arts include drawing, design, crafts, painting, ceramics, sculpture, and photography, video, filmmaking, and even architecture. Now, there are, however, many other disciplines that fall entirely or partially within them. So ranging from design areas such as performing arts, conceptual art, textile art, to other types. They also include within the visual arts implied arts such as industrial design, graphic design, fashion design, interior design. So let's take a quick glimpse at these major fields that that fall under visual arts. So, okay, so I have in our screen the different types of visual arts and the common materials used. Now, these common materials that I listed here are not solely what um, these particular practices involve. No, sabi nga natin learn the rules like a pro, but be able to break them like an artist. So sometimes we can use materials from across other fields, but for the sole purpose of the field that we want to stay in. No, obviously, basically we have drawing and illustration. Okay, so drawing and illustration as an example here. Okay, so before kasi they would think of drawing and illustration as a preparatory stage. But nowadays we know that there's portraiture, there's charcoal illustration, there's pen and ink, there's comic book illustration. So they all fall under drawing and illustration, and common materials are markers, charcoal pencils, ballpoint pens, yan. So mediums like paper, paperboard, specialized paper, yan. There's also other accessories like the smudge stick, the putty, eraser, rulers. Yan. So that's under drawing and illustration. Graphic and fashion design. So I put them all together, but in some references, magkahiwalay sila. Pero the reason why I put them is because of the materials. Mostly, halos may mga, except for cloth and leather and sewing tools, preparatory stages in fashion design are almost the same as like graphic design. No? There's draft materials for drawing and coloring. There's computer equipment. There's printing, no, and of course the fashion design as well. For cloth, the leather, felt, yan. Sewing tools. Okay, so next would be our painting. Okay, now obviously we all know this already. Painting is one of the highest forms daw nga of fine arts, visual arts. So coloring materials like watercolor, meron tayong wet and dry materials in painting. So watercolor, tempera, acrylic, oil, yan. There's mediums like canvas boards, stretch canvas, markers, brush pens, spatulas. Then we have other solutions. For oil painting, you might use turpentine oil, linseed oil. For watercolor or collage, meron mga glue water, acrylic gloss. Yan. So, of course, yung mga accessories, yung mga wipes, texturizers, yan, putty, yan, or mga impasto, yan. So, yun yung mga painting. We have printmaking, mediums like paper, plastic, glass, ink, or paint. Now, I remember, printmaking, hindi ako masyadong, I was not into it too much. But when I was with Erehwon, I was so enamored by the printing machine and all of the process that goes through it. And it amazed me na you'll have to do all of these etching and carving and all of the things that you do before you create that print. Sobrang it's not solely just parang not hindi yung iniisip ng mga tao na artist yan, so bara-bara na lang. Printmaking is very precise and exact. To me, that's what I think. So it's a very what do you call this? Kailangan when you go into printmaking, kailangan talagang very committed ka to do those artworks. No? And then there's also photography, which I also had an opportunity to try in college, and all the equipment that goes through it. No, it's very scientific, it's very exact, and it's very it takes a lot of commitment also to take care of all of these equipment. No, and then also, of course, video and filmmaking. Unfortunately, I haven't had any experience with video and filmmaking, but yun nga, it's also a part of visual art. Siguro yung experience ko lang with video and filmmaking is yung nakikisama ako sa mga indie films ng mga friends ko before. Pag kailangan nila ng ng extra. Pero masaya, masaya. I think it's a very, you have to you have to find the right combination of light, color, and then location. It takes a lot of effort to create something like this. No? So these are basically mga two-dimensional, no? Drawing, graphic design, fashion, painting, printmaking, photography, and video filmmaking. We'll move forward naman to more artworks with more form, three-dimensional, which are crafts, clay and glass ceramics, sculpture, and architecture. No? So for crafts, there's paint mediums like what we use in painting and drawing with an added dimension. No? Specialized materials like clay, plastic fiber, glass, cloth, recycled, upcycling materials. Yan. So yung mga junk art, yung mga recycled art, that will all fall under crafts. And then next to it is clay and glass ceramics. So we put them together because of the process and also of the materials that you use when you do these kinds of art forms. No? So there's a potter's wheel and turntable and kiln for firing in pottery. And then there's furnace and glass blowing for glass ceramics. And of course, the drying shelves. And then we have sculpture, which is soft mediums like clay and saw. And then architecture, from drawing to actually building our buildings and structures. So stone, cement, steel, and glass. So art education is if you're into art education, one of the challenges for educators or parents, teachers, art advocates is how to design the curriculum under these different forms of visual arts that will best provide the best vehicle for students to meet their local goals and the programs and their objectives and become creative innovators in the future. Okay, so let us move on to our final topic, which is why investing in the arts and creative development is important. Why should we care about it? Okay? So, ito yung mga side effects ng creativity. Pag creative ka, marunong ka, gusto mong palagi natututo, so you have knowledge, you're motivated, there's innovation, imagination, you exercise your mind, magaling ka mag-brainstorm, you have a lot of ideas, you have great visions and aspirations. No? So, in fostering creative experiences for the child within us, so we have all of these effects. No? Healthy self-expression, creative arts allows us to express ourselves in healthy ways and to discover what we are passionate about. We think about your days as children, as school-age children, you remember when you develop your own sense of identity, na you start choosing clothes that you like, you have a deep sense of identity, so you remember what you wanted to listen to, the kind of music that you wanted to listen to, or how you wanted to decorate your bedroom, or what kind of shoes you want to wear. So it's a healthy self-expression. No? Creative arts allows each of us to express ourselves in healthy ways and to discover what we are passionate about. So according to Harvard's Project Zero, the arts provide a unique opportunity for people to express themselves beyond their verbal language. So at times, school-age children have difficulty discussing what is in their minds. Not necessarily school-age children, kahit mga adults. And using the arts is a way to help them communicate their feelings in a variety of ways. No? And also, it's good for developing personality and discovering our self-worth. Okay, wait, there. Go. So, creative arts help people develop a healthy sense of self-worth because we tend to feel accomplished and unique when we are given opportunities to be creative. Okay? As we develop and discover who we are, we make some out of the ordinary wardrobe of our behavior choices, or suddenly I'm an edgy kind of person. I want to cut my hair. I want to shave my hair. Ganyan, no? I want to color my hair. And within the family or classroom or organization, it's good to have a discussion about accepting each other with the kind of personality that we've embraced. No, so the term self-worth can be used interchangeably with self-esteem. Creative arts help people develop a healthy sense of self-worth because we tend to feel accomplished and unique when we are given opportunities to be creative. So experiencing the creative arts helps develop characteristics such as confidence, courage, pride. Yan. These characteristics help us, most especially children, develop a healthy self-esteem and feel that we have something to offer to the world. Yan. Fostering culturally responsive creative experiences. So another effect of dabbling into the visual arts or exercising our creativity is this, no, when culturally responsive experiences are those that help people see themselves represented, no. Yung isang example ko dito, yung I feel very a great pride in learning about this new Disney movie where they had a Disney princess that's very Southeast Asian. No, so I feel that the world is in that small project. Well, it's not small project. In that project alone, I feel that the world is recognizing us as a group of a culture that's important as well. No, exposure to the world around us sparks curiosity and creative thinking. So, in terms of creativity, the term culture can be quite broad, and experiences that help define a sense of self and sense of the world around us may include racial or ethnic identity, but it can also include identities related to family values or beliefs or experiences. So, dabbling into the visual arts exercises this healthy response to it, no? Our differences. And then lastly, one of the good side effects of visual arts is distinguishing between process and product-oriented experiences. Now, for educators, this is important because it's important. In your work, you should strive to achieve a balance between process-oriented experiences and product-oriented. No, the process-oriented experience is the journey that one takes when we are creating something. So it's all process-oriented. When we're teaching, when we're parents, and we want to develop our students or children's creative development, the process of doing something is important more than creating a beautiful product. Okay, so now there's also product oriented experiences where it's important to follow certain steps or instructions or rules to create a product that we want to embody or we want to show to other people, no. So it shouldn't always be one sided na dapat we should only give importance to the process or we should give importance to the end product. It should be a balance of both at times, no. So in conclusion, according to Althouse, Johnson, and Mitchell, who wrote about integrating the visual arts into the classroom, when adults continuously dictate to children the size of paper, what color to use, or products to make, creativity is discouraged. But it's important for them to teach them how to follow these rules, but it's also important for them to go beyond it. So if we're learning to play a musical instrument, knit or sew or compose, it's important to follow the rules. But creativity flourishes when each of us have mastered the skills and then learn how to go beyond it. So the journey also of a creative experience. Now in scholastics.com, the article entitled How to Promote Creative Thinking by Alice Sterling Honig, PhD, shares that we often remark on the marvelous creativity of young children's drawings, dramatic play, and inventive language. Children always show imagination when in use of colors or drawings, yung simple line, yung pala airplane na pala yung one line na yun. But as adults, we play an important role in supporting their ability, in each other as well. We should support each other's creative development as well, no? So dramatic expression, creative responses to problems, often our primary goals are directed to keeping each other, our families right now healthy and safe, and teaching cognitive skills such as shape and color recognition, introductory basic literacy and numeration skills. But with all the time that needs to be devoted to these areas, there's less opportunity to think about the importance of our nurturing our creative abilities. So we know that creative power increases a young child's our desires to learn and support intellectual development. So there should always be a balance of this. No? Before I end, I want to share this video. Yan. How art can help you analyze. It was very interesting when I was doing research on this webinar. And after this, let's go back to our small game, a short game that we did in the start of the webinar. Okay, let's watch this video.
There's a prevailing attitude that art doesn't matter in the real world. But the study of art can enhance our perception and our ability to translate to others what we see. Those skills are useful. Those skills can save lives. Doctors, nurses, and law enforcement agents can use painting, sculpture, and photography as tools to improve their visual acuity and communication skills, which are critical during investigations and emergencies. If you're treating an injury, investigating a crime scene, or trying to describe either of those things to a colleague, art can make you better at it. Here, imagine you're a seasoned cop or a dedicated doctor, but also imagine you're at a museum, and let's look at a painting. Rene Mclead's Time Transfixed of 1938 depicts a mysterious and complex interior that invites analysis not unlike that required of a patient's symptoms or the scene of a crime. A miniature train whose origin and destination are unknown is emerging from the fireplace, and the smoke from the locomotive appears to flow up the chimney as if from the fire that is conspicuously absent below. The eeriness of the scene is echoed in the empty living room, enhanced by wood grain floors and decorative wall moldings to the right of the fireplace. Perched atop the mantelpiece are two candlesticks and a clock. Behind these objects is a large mirror that reveals an empty interior and only a partial reflection of the objects before it. The juxtaposition of the objects surrounding the moving train raises numerous questions for which there seem to be no apparent answers. Did I summarize the painting accurately or leave any details out? It's no big deal if you see something else in a painting, but what if we're both seasoned cops? I call you for backup, you show up, only to realize the two bank-robbing ninjas I'd mentioned were actually 6 bank-robbing ninjas with lasers. Close study of art can train viewers to study thoroughly, analyze the elements observed, articulate them succinctly, and formulate questions to address the seeming inconsistencies. Scrutinizing the details of an unfamiliar scene, in this case, the work of art, and accurately conveying any observable contradictions is a critically important skill for both people who look at X-rays and those who interrogate suspects. Let's interrogate this painting, shall we? Okay, Mclead, that's quite a little picture you've painted. But why aren't there any train tracks? Why no fire? What happened to the candles? Why doesn't the fireplace have a little tunnel for the train? It just comes straight through the wall. And the clock says it's about 1:45. But I'm not sure the light that comes through the window at an angle says it's just past noontime. What's this painting all about anyway? That's when you, my trusty partner, hold me back, then I leave. You get Mclead a cup of coffee and keep grilling him to see if this painting would hold up in court. Viewers can provide a more detailed and accurate description of a situation by articulating what is seen and what is not seen. This is particularly important in medicine. If an illness is evidenced by 3 symptoms and only 2 are present in a patient, a medical professional must explicitly state the absence of that 3rd symptom, signifying that the patient may not have the condition suspected. Articulating the absence of a specific detail or behavior, known as the pertinent negative, is as critical as stating the details and behaviors that are present in order to treat the patient. And conspicuous absences are only conspicuous to eyes trained to look for them. Art teaches professionals across a wide spectrum of fields not only how to ask more effective questions about what cannot be readily answered, but also, and more importantly, how to analyze complex real-world situations from a new and different perspective, ultimately solving difficult problems. Intense attention to detail, the ability to take a step back and look differently. We want first responders to have the analytical skills of master art historians at least. Art trains us to investigate, and that's a real-world skill if there ever was one.
Okay, so I hope you got something out of my webinar, and I hope you found interesting stuff to do. Let's go back to our ta-da, first page. Sorry. Let's go back to our word match activity. Now, kanina, I asked you to think of a word for each of the images. Now, my challenge is think of 5 words that will connect to these images. Okay, now we know about the basic elements of art, the principles of design, the different forms of visual art, the creative process that's important for everybody, not just for artists. So I want you to think about all of these topics and try to connect any of those information in any of these words. Okay, 10 seconds. Okay, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So if you ask me, I won't ask you about your answers, but I want you to think about what went in through your mind when you were thinking about the different words. Okay. So being given access to this information, I could say, like, for example, the initial would be for this first image is dog, but I could also say bone. I could also say fluffy texture. I could also say dark color. Now for this image, I could say cat, but besides that, I could say uh, pattern, orange. The opposite of orange, the contrasting color would be blue. Yan. I would also say furry texture. Now, how about this image? Sige nga, meron bang pwedeng magbigay ng example about this image? 5 words that can connect to that simple image. Sinong pwede? Meron ba? Ay, nahihiya ang mga participants ko. Alex, ikaw.
There's balance.
Balance.
Proportion, color. 5, no? Di bang cute?
Pwede.
Cute nila eh. And then, satisfying.
Oh, very good. Okay. So, ang objective ng exercise na to is for us to be able to use our creativity to exercise our brains always. No, when not just in creating art, but in also talking, thinking, yeah. Sitting down, pag may tumitingin ka lang, pag nagbabasa ka, ganyan, no? Let's try to exercise our brains and think of other concepts that may be connected to what we are actually doing. And that's the creative process. Now, there are alternatives to these actions. The kind of thinking sharpens reasoning skills and sparks our own creative solutions for conflicts. No? So now we've talked about the important value of visual arts and how it can help exercise our creativity. Let's always remember na the term be creative is not just through our trade to our particular topic, but be creative should encompass everything that we do in our lives. So with that, I would like to end this webinar by giving the floor back to Alex. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Teacher Dindi. Teacher Dindi, okay lang ba kung mag-open ako ng floor for questions?
Yeah, sure. No problem. That would be great.
Okay, so everyone, in case you have questions, we're open for 3 questions. So you can just use the chat box, or you can unmute yourself or turn your video on. So sinong may question? Don't be shy. Teacher Dindi, naka-mute ka.
Mukhang mahihain ang aking mga participants.
Shy type sila.
Oo. Hindi na kayo mahiya.
Oo nga,
Question. Ano bang mga question na possible? Kung I'm assuming siguro artists sa kayo lahat. So alam niyo na important tong creativity mo. How can we use our trade to encourage other people to be creative as well? Sige, ako na magpo-post ng question. How do you think can we use our trade as artists? You can be interior designers, you can be you can be painters, art teachers, or what do you call this? Illustrators, graphic designers. Anong pwede nating magawa sa trade natin para ma-encourage yung mga tao na isipin na important tong creative process and creative development? Sige nga. Give you 30 seconds to think of an answer. Mag-chat na lang kayo. I-type nyo na yung sagot nyo.
Ayan,
Oh,
Wilbert Castro.
okay. Sharing what I know to them. Okay. How will you share it to them? Sige nga, Wilbert. Napasubot ulit si Wilbert. How will you share it to them? Diba? One, pwede through webinars like this. Diba? Also, even in normal conversations, no? Let's try to be more intelligent individuals na sharing what we like and inviting people to join us in our creative process. When you're a painter, having group exercises or group activities together that you can spearhead, or creating projects like do you know AG Sanyo? Okay, you know AG Sanyo, who's a muralist. So he's painting murals, but his murals are always have messages that help the environment, yung dolphins, yung mga, diba? So that's his art na using it as an innovative way of sending messages to people. Okay, so if we don't have any more questions, thank you very much for everybody who joined us, and I do appreciate this webinar. Thank you, Alex, and thank you to everyone for giving me this chance.
One final request. Can you turn on your video? I'll just take a picture.
Okay. Yay!
Yung iba, dali picture lang.
Sige na. Masyado silang mahihain.
Mga shy type.
Ayan.
Hi!
Hello po!
Sige, let's smile. 1, 2, 3, smile.
Oh, wait lang, meron pang mag-on.
Yan.
Yan.
Sige, 1, 2, 3, smile. Yan. Okay, thank you very much.
Maraming salamat po. Thank you for joining us. Bye, Alex.
Bye. Hope you can watch our videos on YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you.